One of the very first full storytelling format sorts of episodes I did on this channel was My Hero Academia Maximum Venom, and then a couple months later I did a sequel to it. And that didn't just kick off the main format that I use regularly on this channel, it also kicked off a whole series of me venomizing tons of different things. Which I haven't been doing as much lately, but since Venom Let There Be Carnage came out, a bunch of people asked me to jump back into doing more of that. And so I figured a perfect episode in that vein could be doing a third episode in My Hero Academia Venomized series. By the way, timeline-wise, this is going to be set around when Deku, Todoroki, and Bakugo were all working with Endeavor at his hero agency for their other round of work studies. Super excited to continue this story, so let's get into it, shall we? Let's go. Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. Izuku Midoriya leapt and sprinted and lashed out goopy tendrils to fling himself through the city, tailing behind Endeavor. "Are you kidding me, Deku? Even with that stupid black snot on, you can't keep up!" Bakugo yelled as he and Todoroki blasted along, also trying to keep up with the #1 hero's incredible speed.
"You know eating him is still on the table, right?"
But Midoriya ignored the carnivorous friend attached to him. It had been a few months since the symbiote attack at UA High, where Venom had crashed down from another dimension and accidentally split into multiple versions of himself that infected a bunch of students from Class 1A. They believed they'd rounded up and reabsorbed all of the symbiotes back into Venom, but many of the pro heroes had been told to keep an eye out just in case. But again, that was months ago, and Midoriya had been allowed to continue training with the extra abilities Venom gave him, so long as he kept the symbiote's appetite under control. Of course, even with the power boost from Venom, along with his incredible one-for-all quirk, Midoriya still had a hard time keeping up with Endeavor. By the time Deku skidded to a halt at the crime scene, Endeavor had already apprehended the villain they were chasing. Bakugo and Todoroki landed beside him as Endeavor said, "There's only a few days left in your work study. If you want any hope of stopping a villain before me, you'll have to pick up the pace." Midoriya nodded, but as he did, Venom snarled. Endeavor's eyes shot open at him angrily. "No, that wasn't me, it was Venom. I'd never snarl at you, Endeavor, I swear."
"We weren't snarling at him. It's something else."
Venom forced Midoriya's head to turn so he could see in a crowd nearby a familiar face. It was the pro-hero Mount Lady, but in a trench coat, hiding her costume with an eerie grin on her face. Hey, is that... What's she doing here? This isn't her district." The others followed his gaze as a strangely menacing laugh chuckled out of Mount Lady. The crowd parted from her as she said, "Oh, shame on me. I didn't want you to see me, not yet. Not until I'd found my true partner." Midoriya got a chill, and Venom readied for the worst. Mount Lady began to grow, but simultaneously her body morphed as a goopy mass sprung from her skin and coated over her. She grew to be 7 stories tall, and her whole body wriggled and writhed with red and black goop from another symbiote. "In case it's not obvious, boys, in the little tussle we all had back at UA, where you tried to round us all up, you missed one. And now, I've missed you so much." She slammed a foot down towards the heroes who scattered and shot into action to try and take down the mountainous symbiote. A colossal claw shot down at Midoriya, who spiraled around it, then kicked off the arm towards a rooftop. But before he could, a wave of tendrils shot from her hair and snagged him from the air. She smashed him straight down through a building top, and he crashed through 30 floors before finally thudding to a stop. Endeavor, Bakugo, and Todoroki all struck at the infected hero, while Midoriya recovered. "It's a lot stronger and faster than the other copies of you. What gives? Is it because it's attached to a pro hero?"
Doubtful. Something's different about this one. We should defeat it as fast as possible."
Midoriya nodded and shot from the building. He reeled back a fist as he flew, but just before he could thrust, he was again smacked from the air by a tendril and smashed to the street. Bakugo flew through the air, dodging and blasting tendrils. He was barely keeping away from them, but the distraction was enough for Todoroki to get close and shoot a massive barrage of ice, encompassing Mount Lady's lower half. But one leg at a time, her limbs shrunk in on themselves in a swirl of goop, and she stomped out of the ice. "You kids really should stay out of this. I've got no problems bleeding you dry just because you're high schoolers." "That's not going to happen." Endeavor rocketed up and shot a flaming fist right into Mount Lady's jaw. The impact sent a shockwave that shattered windows, but his fist stuck to her. Eerie little goop hands spilled out and grabbed onto his arm.
Oh, the rage in you is intoxicating. Could you be the one I'm looking for?
The symbiote suddenly peeled off of Mount Lady's feet and legs and arms until the entire mass shifted off her onto Endeavor. He tried to erupt his body in flames to get it off, but it was no use. The goop ceased its spread and had fully overtaken the #1 hero, who began to laugh maniacally.
Oh, so much power, so much rage. But it's still not right. You're not the one I seek.
A green and orange streak blasted across the sky as Bakugo flew at Endeavor.
I'm not gonna lie, Endeavor, I'm gonna enjoy this.
He slammed his fist across the pro hero's face, but he barely seemed to notice. Endeavor thrust out a palm and erupted a cannon of fire at Bakugo, which he barely dodged. Todoroki shot up an ice wall that just barely stopped the blast from eviscerating a fleeing crowd of civilians. Midoriya bounded down the road to Endeavor and tackled into him, but barely pushed the pro hero back. But Deku got his claws dug right into Endeavor's shoulders. Absorb it, Venom! Go! Now!
I'm trying, but it's not working.
Endeavor chuckled.
I'm much too strong for that now. In fact...
Suddenly, Venom started getting peeled off of Deku, being pulled into this other symbiote's mass.
What? No! You can't have him! Stop!
Midoriya and Venom suddenly flopped backwards, still connected.
No, not yet, Endeavor said. I need my proper host before I take you. Where are they? I can feel them drawing nearer.
A wall of ice suddenly shot across the road and completely encased the infected pro, but barely for a second. His flames exploded through the ice, and Endeavor turned to Todoroki.
I really wish you would stop doing that, you brat.
He shot across the road and snatched his son by the neck. Todoroki sent blasts of flame and ice at his infected father, but nothing seemed to faze him. Bakugo and Midoriya both bolted in to strike, but were each snagged out of the air by tendrils and slammed to the ground, pinned in place.
I'm just here for Venom, so I think we should thin the herd a little.
A flaming tendril sprung from Endeavor's shoulder, but stopped an inch in front of Todoroki's face.
Why isn't it...
Part of the symbiote suddenly peeled off Endeavor's face.
You will not put a single scratch on my son, monster!
He suddenly released Todoroki and grabbed the goop covering his body. In a tornado of fire, he pulled and tore and ripped the symbiote off himself. The tendrils holding Bakugo and Midoriya soon disappeared, and they both leapt back up, as Endeavor, with sheer force of will, ripped the creature off himself, and it clumped into a mass of red and black on the ground. What do we do? Midoriya asked. We have to contain it somehow. But before he could finish the thought, a green blur flew down the street, scooped up the goop, and leapt up onto a building to scutter away. Alright, you gross alien thing, we're getting you back to the Doc's lab ASAP. Spinner, from the League of Villains, sneered. Before the heroes could charge after him, their attention was pulled by a cascade of blue flames that fired towards them all. They leapt out of the way, but were soon being swarmed by an army of black-masked clones. Bakugo blasted waves of them as he yelled, "Of course the League of Villains has something to do with this, but when did this freak learn to make himself into a freaking army?" Midoriya leapt out of the crowd of twices, but was tackled out of the sky and rolled back to the ground below. He leapt up quickly to see that Spinner had now too been overtaken by the red symbiote.
This host won't do either.
He cocked his arm and a cascade of blades emerged out of it.
He doesn't have the bloodlust that I need.
Spinner sprang forward and thrust the blades at Midoriya. What do you want? Who are you looking for? Midoriya dodged the strike and Venom shot a tendril from his side to hit Spinner away. He skidded to a halt.
I want you, Venom. After I fled from UA High without a host, I was captured by a vile man named Kyudai Garaki. He ran experiments on me for months, tortured me, but also made me stronger. I may have died if it weren't for the fact that every now and then I could feel my perfect host nearby, someone whose bloodlust matches my own. Once I bond with them, then we can absorb you and become unstoppable.
Spinner's head suddenly darted around.
And I can feel them now. They're here somewhere, drawing closer every minute.
He fired the blades from his arms, and Midoriya leapt and dodged around them as the infected villain sprang from the ground into the swarm of Twices, batting them away as he searched. "Where are you, my perfect host? I want to be with you and only—" He stopped, and through the crowd Midoriya could barely see the symbiote slip off Spinner and vanish. Midoriya charged in and tackled away a wave of clones to get to Spinner. He was unconscious, and Deku looked around, but saw nothing but the brawl. "I don't like this. Where did it?" Piercing pain suddenly shot into his back, then again and again. 3 needle-tipped tendrils lifted Midoriya up and ripped him across the battlefield till he was face to face with the symbiote again as it completed its infection of Toga Himiko. "I did it! I found her! And now we can be one!" Midoriya could feel the blood being drained from his veins through the tendrils. "I've always said you'd be a lot cooler if you'd just bleed more, Izuku." He could feel his energy being completely sapped dry. With Venom's added strength, he whipped his arm back, grabbed all 3 tendrils, and tore them out. But just as he pulled free, a blade thrust from her hand and stabbed right through his shoulder. It was excruciating, but he still managed to kick himself back, sliding the blade out and landing on his knees a few feet back. Toga glided the blade past her mouth, licking Midoriya's blood off of it. "Oh, I want more! I couldn't have imagined a more perfect host. I feel so complete. At least, almost complete." Her tendril thrust forward again. Midoriya dodged around them, barely avoiding the strikes. He looked back to the other heroes, but they were all preoccupied with the rest of the League of Villains. He and Venom were on their own. "Try all you like, Venom, but you can't evade me for long. I used to be you. I know every trick you've got. We can't keep dodging her forever, and if she gets a hold of us again, that could be it. So if you can't absorb that symbiote, we'll just have to destroy it."
True, but we know my copies have become immune to sound and fire, which leaves only one option, if it will even work on a symbiote this powerful.
Midoriya suddenly wished that Kaminari was with them, but he'd have to find something else to provide the shock they needed. A red tendril tore through his arm and made him spin out and crash to the ground, but in his brief halt, he saw a downed power line in the distance. Perfect. But before he could run for it, he heard, "Oh, Izuku, how about we make a deal?" His head darted around to see that Toga had 4 civilians held up by the neck with her needles ready to drain them. "It's a simple little trade, really. You give us Venom, then I take you with me to drain your blood whenever I want. Do that, and I won't bleed dry every civilian in 100 miles. At least not today." Izuku's eyes darted over to the sparking power line again. He didn't trust Venom's speed on this one, so he said, "All right, fine. Venom, go to her." Seeing what Midoriya was thinking, the symbiote said nothing and slid off his body and started its crawl towards Toga. She grinned eagerly. "Heroes are so predictable." As Venom got close, she thrust an arm down towards him, but her attention had fully left Midoriya just long enough. Before she could grab Venom, a black tendril thrust into her body, jabbing her with the sparking end of the power line. She dropped the civilians and shrieked as lightning fired through her body. Through the pain, she looked at Midoriya, who even without Venom, had a black tendril sprung from his fist that he'd used to grab the sparking wire. "You may know all of Venom's tricks, but you don't know all of mine." More black whips lashed from his arms and grabbed more power lines, tearing them into sparking frays and jabbing them into Toga's symbiote. She shrieked more and more as the symbiote struggled to remain held to its host. Deku sprinted forward and scooped up Venom again. With the full force of One for All and his alien friend, Midoriya swung out a leg. Full cowling symbiote shoot smash! He kicked the writhing symbiote full force and the goop sprayed back off Toga in wind and sparks, eviscerating in midair into a cloud of red mist. Toga fell back unconscious. Seeing that their target was gone, the other League of Villain members scattered. The heroes ran off to hunt them down, but at least for now, the fight was over, and the day's carnage was finished. And, on top of that, Midoriya had successfully completed his mission. He'd just stopped a villain before Endeavor. You know, even though I think I've become a much better artist and storyteller in the time since I did the first My Hero Academia Maximum Venom episode, I think I might actually like the first 2 episodes better than this one. But you know, maybe that's just me being a bit nostalgic because they're such a integral part of the history of this channel. But you can see what I mean if you want. If you haven't seen them, or if you have seen them and it's just been a while, you can go back to the original My Hero Academia Maximum Venom episodes. I think they hold up decently well. And of course, there's a whole playlist of other things Venomized on this channel. I've done the Justice League, I've done Dragons, I've done Doom Eternal Demons, a whole bunch of them that I can't even think of them all off the top of my head. And I'd love more suggestions for what other stuff to Venomize or Carnage Eyes, I never know how to say that, but to other things I could put Marvel symbiotes onto. Give me your suggestions in the comments. But besides that, that's all for today. I'm Christian Pearson. This has been PopCross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you all in the next episode on Friday. Goodbye.